one other topic, because it's so hot right now, right? Everyone's talking about AI. You and I have spoken about this probably years ago. Now, you know, for listeners, of course, you can go and check out some of the earlier episodes, but Peter's analogy here is like, if we've got a free market, it's like we're on this escalator and you're kind of, the world is getting better over time. And occasionally, sometimes your job gets, you know, automated or obsoleted, and maybe you have to take a step back or so. But fundamentally, if we're on the escalator of society and the economy is growing, we're kind of on this uptrend. Now, fast forward to today, AI is super hot, right? NVIDIA is pumping through the moon. There's so many people talking about AI for this, that, or the other. There's people who think it's overrated. There's people who think it's underrated. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on which kinds of jobs you think AI may start to either obsolete or change.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, content creation, I think all of us have really been amazed, you know, compared to when you and I originally spoke. I think back then, you know, most people, including me, were expecting like factory jobs, maybe truck drivers. Now I think more and more is content jobs. Fortunately, you and I are not exactly that kind of content creators. So I'm hoping we'll be all right. But you know, video production. There's producing music. You know, analysis. Okay, that also seems to be getting automated. There are an enormous number of people who think for a living, and you know that. I think somewhat surprisingly, AI actually seems to be really good at that.
Right.
So
because you could argue it amplifies our work, right? It can maybe amplify the work of a video editor or an audio editor or someone, right? And it makes them more productive. So there's kind of an argument both ways there.
That's exactly right. So I don't remember who said it, but they said an AI is not coming for your job. A human who knows how to use AI is coming for your job. And I think that's absolutely correct. You know, if we look at an analogy, so the internet, I think, in terms of jobs in the economy, the internet itself, I think, is very similar to AI in the sense that the internet replaced a whole lot of jobs. Okay, there was a time when every major company employed people to go out and cut newspaper articles about their company. Okay, and that would be put in a media file, and then that might be referenced in the annual report. Okay, like there were literally thousands of people whose job was to do that before the internet. And Google came out with something called Google Alerts, which is like a trivial little piece of software, and you've probably heard of it, but who cares? Anyway, that completely obliterated that industry, right? Translators. Okay, translators got wiped out with Google Translate. Unless, you know, nowadays if you're a but what I think is interesting about it is that look at what happened to those functions, right? So if you're talking about translate, translators still exist, but every translator runs it through Google Translate first, and then they check it. Okay, so they still exist, but they work about 10 times faster, probably a heck of a lot easier. You just have to kind of look at the difficult cases. Look at what happened with website design. Right, so if you take a website in like 1990 or whatever, 1995, and you're looking at GeoCities, okay, yes, a GeoCities website is now automated. But what happened is the expectations went up. Okay, so like still, I just created a website last year. I had to pay a guy to do it, right? Even with all this automation, I had to pay a guy to do it. Why? Because I can't put up a GeoCities ad website, right? People won't accept it. Now, when I say people won't accept it, what that translates into economic terms is that the product gets better. Okay. And so that, I think, a lot of the jobs that are affected by AI, as you say, like a lot of that's going to be converted into the same thing they used to do, but better, right? You're going to be able to put a lot more people on activities that previously you just couldn't afford a human for. So yeah, right. I'm relatively sanguine on that. Also, again, if we look at the overall jobs impact of the internet itself, you famously can't find it in the data. All of the jobs that the internet replaced, which is an enormous number. I mean, if you think of all the things that humans used to have to do, there's this famous image where they show an iPhone and then they show all the things that you used to need for that. Right, a radio,
like a calculator, a calendar, and so on, a phone,
yeah, exactly.
etc. Yeah,
Right. So replacing all these things, and yet if you look at the overall jobs numbers, it did. You can't even see it, right? Unlike, say, agricultural mechanization, where you can very clearly see when agriculture mechanized, you can see it for agriculture jobs, right? But again, like if you look at the overall jobs numbers, you would never know, right? And the reason, of course, is that a job fundamentally simply means that you are doing a favor for other people, and that favor is so valuable that they're willing to do something for you in return. Okay, that fundamentally is what we call a job. It's also what we call a business. Okay, so I'm gonna do something for you, and if you like it, then you got to give me something, and therefore we're both giving something to each other, and we're both all set. Okay, there is a nearly unlimited number of things that humans can do for each other. Now, at any given moment, people will tend to be doing the best thing they can do. Okay, in other words, like if they lose their job, people are typically upset because it's not like they had a better job just sitting there waiting, right? If they had a better job, then they would have already been at that job, right? So yes, you sort of step down. You were talking about the escalator. In a growing economy, that's not that bad. Okay, like if we had a huge labor shortage because the economy is doing amazing and we're on the gold standard, we're back in the 19th century, then people actually wouldn't care that much. It'd be kind of like losing your job in Silicon Valley where you're like, oh, dude, now I gotta, drive next door and tell them that I'm available for a job. Okay, that's not much of a tragedy. The tragedy, it's not the automation and the losing the jobs. That's not the tragedy. The tragedy is if there's nothing else there, right? And that brings us into killing that golden goose, the stagnation. I think that's really what rightly scares people. It's not necessarily losing their job. There's a lot of people who don't like their job. Okay, the problem is, are there other jobs that you can actually maintain the same standard of living on? And that, depending on where you are in the country, that's increasingly less true than it used to be.
Yeah, that's a good way to summarize it. But nevertheless, I think the challenge for some people is it's difficult to visualize where the new job comes, right? So as an example, they may say, hey, Stephan, or hey, Peter, before I kind of get on board with all AI and using technology, I need to see you point out to me where's the new job. But that's just kind of, hey, the market it's difficult to do that, right? Like I could give an example where historically, when people used to get in elevators, there used to be a guy whose job was to help manage that elevator and press the level. Nowadays, it's just everyone presses, it's self-serve, right? You press your own, you press what level in the elevator you want to go to. What job did that elevator guy go and do instead? Well, it's hard for us to point that out, right? But he went and got some other job somehow.
Yeah, and we can point to it through history, because technology has been advancing for thousands of years. So I mean, we can point back through history and we can say, well, every single time, somehow magically the new jobs appeared. Now, of course, what happened is they stepped one down on the escalator and the jobs were always sitting there. They just weren't filled. Sort of a thought experiment that I like is if you imagine that staff is free for some reason. You have a long lost rich uncle and he tells you, you know what, I think you should hire people. I think hiring people is wonderful. I'll pay their salaries. Hire anybody you want. Anything you like. Okay, so you can hire people for free. How many people would the average family with 2 kids hire? Okay?
Oh,
you would
they'd have a chef,
nanny,
they'd have a babysitter, they'd have a driver, like you name it.
A nighttime security, somebody to, I don't know, listen to you practice your podcast. I mean, there's a lot of people I could hire if they're free. There is an unlimited amount of demand for humans not only because humans are useful, like, we can pick up things and move them, but I mean, humans are useful for a lot of other things. We're company, we're entertaining, we're fun to talk to. Most elderly people spend most of their day alone when they don't want to be, right? Somebody just to keep them company and chit chat with them. Right. I mean, there's a functionally unlimited number of jobs in the economy. The only question is, what's the fundamental value that is able to sort of trickle down so that all of these people have a good quality of life? And there you're talking about things like, to give a concrete example, an iPhone, which is extremely valuable. There's a whole lot of things you can do with it. It solves a lot of problems for you. An iPhone is made out of sand and dirt, metal, right? And that's it. Okay. So sand and dirt is not very valuable. An iPhone is extraordinarily valuable. The difference between that it's competed away so Apple doesn't get all that difference. It sort of trickles down through the entire economy to sort of visualize how the process works. And so if you've got enough value being created by somebody in the society, and then you've got a competitive market such that that value is then spread out among everybody, then it doesn't matter what the jobs are. They could literally be everybody doing each other's laundry. That's the famous example from I think it was the 19th century. Napoleon dismissed the British economy because he said, no, everybody just does each other's washing. Well, okay, yeah, the vast majority of people in Britain in the 19th century did relatively useless things like laundry or cleaning floors. If you ever watch Downton Abbey, nobody in that entire show is gainfully employed, right? I mean, in terms of producing something for society, they're all just like washing each other's backs. But somebody somewhere in Britain was creating an enormous amount of value, and the British economy was competitive enough that then trickled down so that everybody in Britain was, at that time, by far, the richest people on Earth. In fact, the richest people Earth had ever seen. So it's difficult, when you sort of trace out the concrete examples, because it's easy for people to say, where are the jobs going to come from? To which, my answer would be, well, I mean, if I literally knew what the next industry was to blow up,
you'd be a billionaire.
Have a lot of money, right? Yeah, I'd be up there with Elon Musk. I mean, I don't know. I'm not smart enough. But, if I look back through thousands of years of history, from the moment that we automated, food preparation using fire, technology has eliminated jobs, and there's inevitably just an army of billions of jobs sitting there waiting to be filled, but there's not enough people to fill them given what people are willing to pay for them, right? And so what you hope is that the people lose their job because they're replaced, so now they're willing to take the job, and meanwhile the economy's growing, so other people are willing to pay them to watch the kids, okay? If that happens, then it's win-win. Technology is wonderful. We're all getting richer. You're stepping down on the escalator, but the escalator is going up. If, on the other hand, that one breaks, right? If the economy is not growing, then when people step down, they stay down, right? The escalator stops. And now you're no longer on an escalator. Now you're actually stepping down a staircase. So that is the concern.